Hmm. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome, welcome, welcome. First and foremost, happy Thursday, or should I say Friday Eve, y'all. You know we live for Fridays. Anyway, happy Friday Eve. You are here with Out of My Shell and Coach Michelle Jackson and our special guest tonight as we are wrapping up our month of May Let's Talk Mental Health series. I will have a surprise for you guys in June, but we'll save that for later. But our special guest tonight is none other than Taylor Rysdon. So, Taylor, welcome to Let's Talk Mental Health.
Thank you.
I'm so very thankful you're here. I am super, uber excited, if you can't tell with my tongue getting all tied. But I'm excited, and I hope we have a lot of guests in here. I'm going to leave it up to you to introduce yourself and tell anyone and everyone what you want them to know about you, including your relationship to me. Take it away, Taylor.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. I am Taylor Rysdon. I am a mom and a wife, and I like to call myself a self-proclaimed vegan influencer because since going vegan 6 months ago, I've been trying to inspire those around me to also choose a vegan lifestyle. I am actually out of my shell, Michelle Jackson's daughter. And so I'm really grateful that I was, able to come into this environment and be on your live and talk about my experience. I am so passionate about encouraging and inspiring other people to live out their best self, um, whether it's physically, mentally, or emotionally, because I do think all three of those key areas have a big impact on how we show up in the world. So, that's a little bit about me. I am currently working in corporate America, but I do have a passion for writing and, like I said, connecting with people. I think my newest motto is people first. So
Hmm.
I am just so big on putting people first. I feel like we've seen, right, and whether it's in corporate America or in volunteering, that we lose the people aspect. And I do believe that, there's like those sayings when you go on interviews where they say, like, rate people, rate your understanding of this statement or how much you agree with the statement. Like, I believe all people are inherently good. Agree, strongly agree, that those types of questions. I do believe that all people are inherently good. But I do feel like we lose our way along the process. And so that's why I say I'm big on like people first. So that's a little bit about me, or maybe a lot of it, but thank you again.
No, you told us something about yourself, who you are, what you do, and what you're striving to be. So I think you talked about striving to be. So that's a good thing. I am very, very happy to have you here. This is a deep conversation, but you know we're gonna have fun, girl. And y'all, she's my daughter. Can y'all believe that? Anyway, so let's just dive right in. So, how would you describe your childhood?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I would say that my childhood overall was very good. I do think that I had some big life experiences that have shaped who I am today, from growing up in a predominantly white neighborhood, being a black daughter to a single mother. I know we're going to dive into that a little bit later. But I will say that my childhood was overall good. But I also would be remiss to not mention that I think in many ways it was functionally dysfunctional. There were just a few pivotal moments that I can put my finger on and say, wow, that really stands out to me. And it did affect my mental health and my well-being as I've come into adulthood. But yeah, I think finishing up on a positive note, I think that some of my fondest memories were obviously having sleepovers, when friends would come over and they would always tell me, like, man, I wish your mom was my mom, like those kinds of experiences do stand out to me as well. So again, that's where I think the functionally dysfunctional piece comes in, because I had, even being raised by a single mother, my mother,
Mhm.
showed up at events and was present and had meaningful conversations. But at the same time, there were some pivotal experiences that left a little bit of an imprint, which I think we're going to end up getting into during our time today. So yeah, I think overall, again, I have so many fond memories of just cooking with you around the holidays, and I do think that we're always on a path, right? We might not see the entire path. It's like that quote that talks about the staircase. You just have to take a step. You might, even if you don't see the whole staircase. And I feel like where I am now, I'm not even hitting my 30s yet. I haven't always seen the full staircase, but I'm continuously taking steps. And I think as I'm taking steps, I'm realizing each step connects to the next part of the journey. So
That's really good and insightful. So one thing I do want to say, it seems as if when you move your hands, it gets staticky. I don't know
oh,
if
sorry.
that's interrupting the flow of your earbuds or what, but that's just a note so that when you watch it back, you won't say, "Why didn't she tell me I was getting staticky?" So when
No,
your
that's
hands come
good.
up
Thank
like
you.
this, yeah, I get a little bit of an interruption. So that was an
Okay.
amazing answer. You were raised in a single parent home. You said you had positives and negatives. I think as all people do, but
Hmm.
because this is about a mental health discussion, we're going to dive deeper into potentially some of those negative things. And guys, this is, as we said, guys and gals, ladies and gents, all of that. This is about mental health. Mental health can get a little dicey, as we know, and there can be some interruptions in your mental health. You can have good mental health, you can have poor mental health, but as Taylor said, did you say it's a journey or something like being a journey?
Hmm. Yep.
Life
Yep.
is okay. It's a journey. Even with mental health, it can be a journey. One that you start at point A, striving to get to point M or point Z. So we're going to really dive deeply. We hope that we don't bring any triggers, but this is a conversation that I thought was so necessary because I've not seen anything like this before. A mother interviewing her daughter about her experience as it pertains to and relates to her mother's mental health journey. So diving right in. Did you experience any childhood trauma? And if so, can you share how those experiences made you feel or what they caused in your life?
Yeah, I think again, another great question. I did experience trauma, so I won't list everything, but I will list a few major things that played a huge role. And I think the number one for me, I'm starting in a um, um, gosh, I'm losing my words here. Like I'm going in order, right? Is
Okay.
it still staticky when I'm moving my hands right now?
Right now it's not, but I did hear it a few seconds ago. But you're fine. Hopefully when we watch it back. If
Okay.
those viewers who are out there, first, if there are viewers, I think there are a couple, please say something in the comments. Are you able to hear Taylor and me clearly, or are there interruptions or breaks? If so, we want to correct that now before we get too deep. So if you could just let us know if the feed is good, and if not, we're going to keep going. Taylor, I don't want to wait too long because there might be a slight delay. And so, yeah, childhood trauma. If
Okay.
so, how did it make you feel, or what did it cause in your life?
Yeah, so I do think going in order from being
Mhm.
born until being an adult, I think one of the big things initially was just having a single parent, right? That means
Mhm.
somebody is missing. So in my case, my father was an absent father and he was inconsistent. So sometimes we were communicating, sometimes we weren't, sometimes I was seeing him, sometimes I wasn't. So that was definitely right straight off the bat, extremely impactful and a big piece of where I've had some holes and some gaps and just how I've become. And then thinking about that, sort of building off of that experience, I did experience my mother, you obviously, um, going through an abusive relationship. And it wasn't something that was ongoing. I think I just want to call that out. I think sometimes,
Thank you.
and I call it out because I think a lot of us, often say, well, it didn't happen a lot. And this is kind of twofold. Things don't need to necessarily happen every single day for it to be traumatic.
Mhm.
And that's where we sort of can sometimes dwindle down the impact of our experiences. But at the same time, I don't want to be overly dramatic and make it seem like I was in a household where I was watching my mom be thrown against the wall every day, because that's not true either. I had one experience that stood out to me where you were formerly married, not to my father, and in that experience, he was very abusive, and I just so happened to hear noise and walked into the room and told him to get off of you and hit him on his back or something. And when I hit him on his back, he pushed me across the room. And um, so it was a very traumatic experience. And I do remember, being put in a position at one point or another where I had to call the police. And in the process of calling the police, it was just, some of it is hazy. I think that's the thing. If you can look back on your life at a specific experience and say, I don't really remember all of that, it's probably traumatic if it was something
Very
that was
true.
negative. It's a sure tale sign that you've gone through some sort of trauma. So that was the second sort of thing that stood out. And then, of course, following that experience, a year or so later, we moved from Georgia. We were living in Georgia at the time and moved to back to south suburbs outside of Chicago. And that was your most recent and final suicide attempt. So that was traumatic for me, for sure. I think that how did it make me feel? I think it's sort of stuck with me, all of those experiences. I think there's one thing that stands out in each of those experiences and how they're all weaved together. And I think that's feeling a sense of like no control. Like I had a lack of control and a lack of balance. So things could be great one day, right? My mom's dancing with me, we're singing, we're having sleepovers and birthday parties, and you're going above and beyond for holidays that most people don't even celebrate in 1 minute. And then in the next minute, you're laying in a hospital bed because you've had your last suicide attempt. So like, I think in all three of those experiences, I think my life has sort of been, I've sort of existed in a state of extremes, this is coming to me now. I didn't even prepare this part, but I really am realizing now, like my biggest challenge that I've had to overcome was finding the balance. But I think the reason I've had to try and figure out the balance is because I'm used to some sort of extreme. And again, it doesn't mean that like my whole life was toxic, but I think that things could be fine one day and then wham. And it wasn't like consistent throughout my life. I feel like it was just in those formative years, which is why it's so important, which we'll talk about motherhood, but I think that's why it's so important as a parent, whether you're a mother, father, whatever, to really think about those formative years, because it makes a difference in who your child becomes. They could have, the first 5 years of their life be up and down a little bit and just a lot of uncertainty. And then the next 15 years of their life, it's beautiful, but they still can't seem to remove the stronghold of the feeling of uncertainty, which often leads to anxiety. So you're anxious about the future. It's like that saying, if you're depressed, you're living in the past. If you're anxious, you're living in the future. And I think we've always talked about me being more of an anxious character. I don't really have a whole lot of depression, but I think now, I mean, I promise you guys, I feel like I'm getting healing just in saying this. This was not prepared. And I got a chance to see some of the questions, but this makes sense now. It makes sense that, of course, I would be an anxious human being from some of these experiences. So I hope
So
that
those are
answers
yes, that totally answers the question. I just want to expound on a couple of things that you said that were phenomenal. As Taylor pointed out, often trauma will affect our memories, especially when you think about trauma that existed in your childhood. Now, if you were traumatized yesterday, your memory might be a little better, even though some of the most traumatic details that maybe you're not equipped at that moment to process, you will suppress. So in suppressing it, it messes with your memory, of course. But when you're a child, as Taylor even stated, that situation that she referred to in the home with my former husband, all of that happened in one day. The push and the calling of the police. We moved within a month or two later. It was less than 2 months, because after that, it was like, okay, time to go. Police were called and all that. He was officially arrested. Do you remember that he was arrested?
It's so hazy. I just remember them taking him away. I remember like family coming with like a moving truck.
Exactly. And that was
That's
like
it. Everything
probably
else
a
in
month
between
later.
that was gone.
Yeah. So just talking about the trauma and the memories of that, and learning to be able to, not even learning, but expanding your capacity, and we could expand our capacity to process those details, to process the trauma as we go through our healing process. That's how we expand our capacity to do it as we confront some things, but we also have a community to help us through it, and whatever measure you take. And then also you mentioned, I thought that was really good about the memory, but you mentioned something else that I was really trying to hone in on, that because I talk so much, I forgot. But no,
It's okay. Probably was it the anxiety stuff?
yes. And just, it was such a good message that depression, you're living in the past, what happened, what, the gloom. And depression is twofold. It's living in the past, but it's also having hopelessness for the future. So it's both. It's kind of twofold. But because of the past, you're living so much in that. And then that's for trauma related depression, because some depression is not trauma related, right? There's no trauma response. There's no trauma trigger, but some people are born with a chemical imbalance, and we won't dive too deeply into that. But the anxiety being the whole anxious about the future. And it does 100% make sense that if you have this much stability and everything's going along great and wonderful, and then you're shaking like this, of course, and then that happens more than once. Okay, you get stability again, and then it's a year later, and now you're shaking again, and then here's 2 years. And of course, you're going to live as an adult dealing with anxiety. Now, can you overcome it? Of course. Can you treat it? 100%. Can you address it? Absolutely. But that is such good insight, and it is really good. So you said you were processing some things on camera, which is beautiful. Of course, Taylor and I have had conversations about a lot of these things, if not everything. I don't know what her answers are going to be to everything, but I think we've talked about a lot. But just hearing her say, wow, this makes sense. And
it makes sense.
I won't share this one situation, but when she was a child, and this was after my last suicide attempt, an actual death by suicide, which is why part of what I shared with you guys was what happens to the child as we were promoting this interview. What happens to the child what happens when the mother attempts or dies by suicide? What happens to the child? And that's why, because I did flatline and I did die, but a child is left. That's why I thought this conversation was so imperative, because I talk a lot about my experiences, but how many times do you see someone interviewing after after an attempted suicide, and they actually talk to the people who that suicide also impacted? Because I wasn't just trying to die. But there were, and this is something I'm getting like fresh manna. I was trying to die, not knowing that it was in the process killing parts of my child, that she would have to pray to be reborn and rebirthed through. So some of her stability and just that whole anxious thing and the control thing, it made her feel out of control and out of sorts. So thank you, first of all, for being so transparent, Taylor. I know this is not, the easiest interview or the funnest interview, but I appreciate your transparency. I know we're both so funny, but okay. So what effect did my mental illness have on your mental health? What effect did my mental illness have on your mental health? And you kind of tapped into that, but I want you to expound a little bit more if you can.
Yeah, of course. I think there were a few things that I already mentioned, like feeling a lack of sense of control. I don't think that makes total sense as a sentence, but feeling a sense of no control. So, which then breeds me wanting to always be in control. So now I have control issues, and I want to, but it's strange. So anyway, we'll get to that. But overindulging in control, right? It sounds like I'm eating too much chocolate, but truly you can overindulge in wanting to have control. So definitely that, trying to control outcomes because I want to make sure everything's perfect. Wow, that's another one. Like wanting to be a perfectionist too, wanting things to be perfect. I did not have this as something that I wrote down, but my inability to not follow through. To not follow through. So I have to follow through.
I'm like, to
The
not.
point that I'm trying to not meaning have to, but truly I have to follow through. So, and I think part of that comes too from you telling me, like, if you sign up for soccer, you're following through with the season, and at the next season you don't have to play soccer, but you're going to follow through with what you signed up for. But I do think a lot of that comes from trauma as well. I'm still laughing over the not,
The not.
but yeah, I think I definitely think that I have a sense of wanting to overindulge in being in control. And because of it, I've had to really scale it back. Hypersensitivity. So if somebody, it could be a stranger at the grocery store, I've never seen their face before. I don't know if they just have resting sad face, right? But if I see them and they look sad, it's like that walk away, Taylor, walk away. I have that voice in my head that says just walk away. Don't ask the sweet lady at the Kroger counter if she's doing okay, because it's none of your business. And I generally fail at that. I think I still say, "Hi, how are you, ma'am? Are you? I know I see you have a busy line. You must have had a really busy day." And I think it goes past just being kind. I think some of it is just me being obsessed with making sure people are okay and hypersensitive to, the little things that are just, you can't be responsible for everyone's emotions and their feelings and what they're going through. It's okay to care, but caring too much. And then, of course, that then breeds anxiety if it's people that are closest to me, because it's like, is something wrong? And if they don't tell me, even though I know in my gut that there is something wrong, you couldn't convince me that something isn't wrong. I will,
Yee.
sometimes I've even had people tell me, like John will tell me, my husband, he'll say, I'm fine. And I'm like, are you sure you're fine? So now I'm doing Jedi mind tricks on him. So then he walks away like, am I
Am I
fine?
fine?
Maybe I'm
I
not
thought I
fine. So now,
was.
exactly. And then he wants to bring me back like something, right? He doesn't want to feel like, oh man, because he knows my history and he knows that I have a certain level of anxiety with that. But it's not all negative. So that's one thing about me, you guys. I'm going to try to end on a little bit of an uplifting positive, and that's it's made me an empathetic person. I think there are a lot of people who do walk around like, it's fine, everybody's fine, or they don't even think about other people, they just care about themselves. So I think, especially in my older age, for sure, I think I had some selfish ways when I was younger, just naturally being a child. But now that I'm older, I definitely feel like I have moments with my son where I'll say, like, Jonah, are you okay? And he's like, yes, mommy, I'm fine. And I'm like, are you sure you're fine? Because you just made a face 5 minutes and 27 seconds ago that looks like you're not fine. And I'm like, Taylor, walk away. So yeah, I think it's definitely made me empathetic, but also a little bit imbalanced in many ways.
So, just to recap, everyone, I know Taylor is
Mhm.
eloquently stating all of her experiences and feelings and everything she's gone through and the no nos, but the no nos. Remember the no nos? She forgot that fast. Okay, but so what's
I'm like, no.
important to remember, like if you are a parent with children, and this is going to be the segue into us sharing with Taylor or asking her about her experience and how her childhood experiences formed who she is today as a mom, as a wife. But if you are a mother and you're struggling with your mental health, seek help. Like, seriously, seek help, because Taylor is a very well balanced, amazing person. However, you know, I don't know how long ago it was, but I think a few years ago I started to kind of do a pulse check with her, like, so hey, everything's great with us. And I just bring up, did my last suicide attempt affect you? Do you find yourself thinking about it? How did it affect you? Are you going through anything because of it? Because we don't think about when we're in that dark, depressive state, when we're hopeless, we can't fathom adding to our plate of thinking about someone else's well-being, especially in a clear, filtered way. In my mind, Taylor was going to be better off without me. I didn't think past dying. So it wasn't like I was thinking, oh, well, when this suicide doesn't work and they bring me back and I actually come back and now I have to address my 9-year-old who knows because she's heard from someone else that her mother tried to die. I never thought that far. I thought I was going to die and stay dead. So there wouldn't be a conversation. So if you are struggling and you are thinking of suicide, get help. 800-273-8255 is a great resource. No one's going to judge you. Call them, share your heart, especially parents, because what we don't want to do is pass down the residue of our mental health or our mental illness to our children. So that's just my little segue into that. But Taylor, that
I
takes me
agree.
into my next question. So we talked about how did what you experienced as a child shape who you are today. We've talked about that pretty much enough. But how have you reconciled your childhood experiences to become the mom, wife, and vegan influencer that you are? Like, what things have you done to help yourself along the way to be this phenomenal person, mother, wife, woman, influencer?
Thank you. I appreciate that question. I definitely feel like I've had to learn. Um, First, I got therapy, the importance of therapy, and I know that there's like a stigma, and everybody says these exact same words. There's a stigma with therapy. But honestly, like once you sit on that couch, especially if it's a comfortable couch, it's almost like you're a new person when you walk out of there. And I've gone to therapy. I went
I'm
primarily,
sorry, I can't resist.
go ahead.
Excuse me. Are we talking about therapy or taking a nap? Because that kind of sounded like you took a nap. I don't know.
Girl,
And you woke up refreshed.
I'm like, I'm like, I'm like, girl, sometimes both as a mom when you go to therapy. It's like, I'm here just for the nap. $75 an hour, it's fine, just let me sleep. But no, yeah, I think, and there were some times I honestly was pretty sleepy in therapy, but truly, I believe in therapy. I believe in the power of going to somebody that has shared values. So it's not just go on 1-800-therapy.com or, call 1-800-therapy and ask for a therapist. I think it does need to be specific to your values, because if I'm on the phone with a therapist who's not a woman, especially now in this phase of my life, my former therapist was actually a man, a white man of all things. So very opposite of me being a black woman, like, couldn't relate to me as being black, couldn't relate to me as being a woman. So, and very much like from Cincinnati, Ohio, where we live. And so there's a different culture. I think it would have been different had he maybe been a white woman from, I don't know, a city that's more diverse. But Cincinnati isn't very diverse. So there were just some few things that weren't. I'm surprised it went so well, to be honest. And I was more on the desperate side of just like, it was right before John and I were getting married. Not even before we were getting married, right before we started dating, I started therapy. I was coming out of actually a very abusive relationship. Before that, and, John and I had been friends for like, I don't know, 9 months or so, friends, coworkers. So we have an interesting story for another day. But I had, closed that chapter of my life, and I was like, I need to be in there. Like, I need to see somebody. And you didn't even know that I was in an abusive relationship. And so I started therapy and unpacked a lot of that. But what ended up happening is my therapist at the time, Chris, he connected the dots for me as to like, do you think that your experiences seeing abuse, even just once, having your mom's, suicide attempt, these pivotal things, not having your father in your life, do you think that led you to even being in this type of relationship? Because you never think that it would be you, right? But I do think that that's where we bridge that gap, and you get the opportunity to sit down with someone. Again, I think I was very blessed to have just my 1-800 therapist that I found randomly. But now if I get to a place where I need to go back, and I do think that therapy isn't something, it's different for everyone. I think that sometimes it's seasonal, and sometimes
Mhm.
people are in therapy maybe for life.
Mhm.
But I do think for many, I don't know the stats, and I'm not licensed in this space or an expert by any means. I do think a lot of times it can be seasonal. Maybe you just had a baby and you're going through postpartum. Maybe you just went through a big life change, someone passed away, or you just started a new job and you're just feeling anxious. Honestly, I'm thinking about all this right now to myself, and I'm like, man, I need to be in therapy, y'all, right now. Because I do have a lot of big life changes these past couple years. But for me, I just wanted, I started therapy to unpack things before I went into my relationship with John. And especially in that early time period in our relationship as well. And then again, once like throughout. So I guess for me, if I were to start therapy tomorrow, I would definitely find somebody who has aligned values, is a woman, is Black, and then again is a Christian because I'm a Christian. So I just, some of those things, like some of those doctrines, and this is personal therapy, right? If I started personal therapy, I want people with similar doctrines. I actually had a college professor once who told me, and I'll be quick, sorry, I don't want to talk too much, but I actually had a college professor once who told me when you get married one day, and this stuck with me. It was my first semester of economics, which I basically failed his class, but I got this lesson out of his class. And he said, when you get married, find somebody who has shared values in three key areas. I don't completely remember, but he said marriages are destined to last when you have similar socioeconomic upbringing, right? So having somebody who was a millionaire and having somebody who was relatively, from a lower economic status, they're probably going to have some major issues. And he said this is what worked for his wife, shared religious backgrounds. And there was like one other thing, I don't really remember, but those two things stood out to me, similar backgrounds. And then again, socioeconomic. And he might have said faith. I think it probably was faith, some sort of like your belief system. So I say all of this to say therapy is definitely something for me that worked for me. So number one, therapy, and then again, finding a therapist that is aligned with your values. And then the second thing is just you are what you consume. So obviously we talked about veganism at the beginning. If you're consuming, dark television, John and I went through a period where we were watching tons of dark zombie movies, and it was wonderful until I was having nightmares and feeling anxious every day and scared walking around my house like, am I going to see a zombie? Like, that's not good for your mental health in large consumption. So it's about having balance, right? So we are what we consume. And if you're consuming dark stuff on television, if you're consuming bad food, tons of processed foods, if you're consuming, in my case, if you're consuming meat and dairy, you're going to feel the hormones and the pain of those animals. So I couldn't help it. I had to use this as an
Of
opportunity to
course she
share.
did.
But if you're consuming
I eat
something,
meat, y'all.
if you're consuming things that come, but truly, if you're consuming things that come from pain, you're going to feel pain. And like, I think we forget that, whether it's with your eyes, your ears, and scripture tells us about it, We have to watch what we view, what we eat, what we hear. I don't know if it says eat, but what we
It
hear, what
says
we
guard your
see.
eye gates and your ear
Yeah,
gates from carnal things. Yes.
exactly. And I mean, think about it, right? If you're watching that steak
You
on a
know
plate,
what?
you're probably
So
gonna
we're
eat
trying to
it.
figure
Guys, I'm over here knocking myself out on the wall.
I was going to tell a really horrible joke. I was going to say that was God getting you for me. But anyway.
I'm like, mm-mm.
Okay.
So yeah,
So you said,
definitely therapy and then the self-work.
okay, so therapy, because I'm trying to type it in the comments. Therapy and
Mhm.
consume healthy things, be balanced. But you said do the work, right? We're going to make
Yeah, I
that three.
guess more like regimented self-care. Regimented
Okay.
self-care looks like having a routine, right? If like for me, I know this is gonna sound wild, you all, and I'm trying to get better at saying crazy because I think there's a connotation
Yeah,
with crazy. So I'm trying to start
absolutely.
saying wild. But I know this is gonna sound wild. For me, I used to always tell my mom this, and she never believed me. And I'm putting you
Oh,
on the
here we
spot right
go.
now because you always give me a hard time about this. Anytime I fall asleep with the TV on, you all, I get a stomach ache when I wake up in the morning. And she has always thought I just like made it up. I'm serious. I have a stomach ache if I fall asleep watching the television. I wake up and my stomach hurts. That is why I say regimented self-care. So this is this is so for real. That's funny. This is why I say regimented self-care though is so important. So going to bed, and I'm a hypocrite while I'm saying it because I'm not the best at this, but going to bed at similar times each night, waking up at similar times each morning, having a routine, and then again having a routine with what you consume physically, mentally, and emotionally.
That's really good. That's really, really good. And practical. It's nothing that, I mean, it's something that everyone can do, right? It's not these big lofty goals of, oh,
Hmm.
make sure that you pray 12 times a
Yeah.
day and turn to the east and turn to the west. Yes, we're both Christians. We're both believers. You know, hop on your head, turn around 3 times, do the hokey pokey. No, we're talking about practical things that everyone can implement, right? So that's really, really good. The hokey pokey. Sorry, that's an
Oh
insider, y'all.
gosh, you're killing me.
Okay, so what parallels, if any, do you see with how you were parented versus how you show up as a parent?
Can you all hear me okay?
Uh huh.
Okay, yeah, I think it's the same. Honestly, if anything, I'm more strict as a parent than you were. And I always said, I'm never going to be X, right? Fill in the blank. And I'm just like completely wild, you all. It is a zoo over here. I am very strict. I'm trying to work on that. I think for me, as I'm getting older, I realize like there's so many more dangers. Even having, John and I are married, we're raising these boys together. And I could not, I tell my mom every day, I could not imagine being a single parent. I see why you dealt with what you dealt with, and I've said it because and like it's too much. I'm sorry, but it
I
is too
cannot.
much. I'm sorry. It's too much sometimes for me, and I have help, right? So I definitely, what are the parallels? I'm off the charts. I feel like I am so strict. I told John, I'm like, when they're old enough, John is always talking about like a little girl at school he likes. I was like, I don't care about Madison. I don't care about her. Who is she? And so I'm like very much like I don't want to hear it. But I'm open. I think I am more. I would say in many ways I'm a little more open as far as I'm from a different generation, so we talk a little more. You always talk to me about my feelings, but there are times, girl, I'm old school, but I'm in a different generation, and these kids have all the feelings, and they say, "Well, mommy, you're being too much," and I'm like, I will take it old school on you in 5 minutes. You better watch your mouth. And but he can still say it a little bit. I just think there's a difference in the generations. But yeah, I'm strict as strict can be. I would have never guessed it. I don't think Jonah's ever going out. I mean, we even when he goes across the street to the little girl's house to jump on the trampoline, John and I are both of us. We both are the same. Like he's not gonna get a break. John and I are like looking out the window, like, what's he doing? What's he doing? Like, where is he? And so I feel like we are very much strict, complete parallels, and I'm working on it.
So this conversation really could last forever because there are so many layers, right? We're talking about mental health and your perspective from being a child living with someone who was me. I was someone battling a mental health illness, severe mental health illness to the point of suicide. And we talk about the effects of that had on you, the anxiety, the lack of feeling like the rug was pulled from under you. So you had control issues, but now you're an adult. And then you coming from a single parent home. I was a single mom with you had an inconsistent father, but here you are. Um, you're not suicidal. I'm
Yeah.
not diminishing or removing the fact that there's been some anxiety issues or some triggers maybe, but that you're cognizant enough and connected enough with your own feelings to get the help to go to therapy. As you said, the abusive relationship, I didn't even know about it, and when I did, well, we're going to leave that story to ourselves. But no, but all of these layers, and then you're married, and then you have a blended family. So that's another thing that
Hmm.
I didn't put in the questions, but share anything you'd like to share, even as it relates or pertains to a blended family with different races, two sons. And, with this racial climate, does that impact your mental health? Are there any, I don't want to dig too deep
Good.
in your marriage, of course, but
Yeah.
does that weigh on the mental health? Because we know what we've gone through in this country for the last 400 years.
I think that's a really good question that I feel a lot of people don't talk about, especially in mixed
Hmm.
race marriages. I would say John's been a big advocate for the cause, and that's the best way I can put it. He's been a big
He is.
advocate. I do think there were some, and he's even said it himself. You know, he's learned a lot, and he didn't ask me, his Black wife, to teach him. Like, he's learned a lot, because that's another thing. You know, that's a whole other layer of this whole progressive movement toward racial tension and racial injustice. There's this statement that, like, the Black community is supposed to teach white people how to not be racist. And I feel like that's putting too much pressure on the Black community. So I would say he has definitely been. I thought that.
I had to give you all the claps for that. First it was for funny. Now it's for all claps.
I thought that was
yes.
bad. Yeah, okay,
What?
good. I'm
No,
like,
no,
I
no.
thought
That was
for
good.
bad,
That
so
was
I'm like a
good.
little confused.
No, it needs to be said.
But
And I don't
yeah,
even mean, when I ask the question, I'm not even talking about if there's tension in your household, but just external stuff, because we do
no,
still
I know
live
what you
in a
mean.
racist
Yeah.
society. So people seeing you and John
No, I
together,
know.
and
Yep.
then the little babies, and yeah, I know you're
Mhm.
answering it correctly, but I'm just
Yep.
expounding for the audience, those who are watching, so they don't think, well, maybe she
No,
was,
that's
no.
good.
Hmm.
N-
But go
No,
on, I'm
I'll
sorry.
speak to that too. I think, and that's what I'm kind of building up to. No, you're fine. I think he was a big advocate, and so we had a lot of the tough conversations about, okay, what will it look like when we go to X place? Sometimes I feel like he's ready to pop off before I am when we are out in public, because he's just like, and he thinks a little bit more. Even though, again, being a Black woman, I'm always thinking about, what if we get pulled over? But I think sometimes he's kind of like, I don't like this person walking past our house. I mean, just like the little things. And I'm kind of like, I
Wow.
wish they would. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, I think there's been a lot of conversations externally outside of our household. And even with Jonah, just telling him, like, look, the world, and he's had these conversations. I was telling somebody at work about this. Sorry, I'm all over the place, but
No. Before you
I'll,
say this, please tell the audience how old Jonah is, because of course they probably won't
yes.
know.
No, that's good. So Jonah, our oldest, is 8. He'll be 9 in July. And so he has, and maybe at some point we will do another live and share about our blended family and our story.
Hmm.
But we've been bringing him up to speed because he's asked certain questions, or he hears me, hears us, specifically me, in the mornings when I'm watching the news, and he's like, why are, police officers killing Black people? And I'm like, oh gosh, we'll
Wow.
wait till daddy gets home and talk to you, so we can talk together and eat the whole elephant together. But that's all. I think that John's definitely been an advocate, and sometimes he's more sensitive to it than I am when we're out in public. But we have had to have a lot of tough conversations about what it will look like when Jonah's 16 one day and he's able to drive. What does it look like when he's walking around the neighborhood, and he's a little Black boy, So just things like that, we've had a lot of conversations. I mean, it's been COVID, right? So we don't really go out as much to have to worry about the looks and things like that. But I know that they exist. And earlier in our relationship, pre-COVID, it was definitely a factor. I think people would just kind of, okay. And what effect, essentially tying it back all together, what effect has it had on my mental health? I think we've spent a lot of days where we're just talking about race all day and night. and it's because I have to be able to talk about it, whether I'm talking to you and John's on the phone and he's listening and we're venting, and he says some pretty funny stuff, not about race issues, but just kind of about race issues. I can't go into it, but he's a character, and he definitely has helped create a safe space where I don't have to feel like I can't talk about a Black man being murdered in the street. And so we've had a lot of those dialogues, and yeah, so it's been a learning, I think, for both of us too. So
Hmm.
I don't know
So
if that
that is
answers
a
it, but what
wonderful.
effect did it have on my mental health? He was definitely understanding that there's a lot going on, and it doesn't affect me the same way that it affects you. I think that's the other thing, because so many people are not Black and they're like, oh my gosh, it just breaks my heart. And it's like, no, it doesn't break your heart the same way. And that's the thing. He's like, I will never understand what it's like to be a Black woman, but I stand with you and I stand with our boys, and I'm going to do what it takes to protect them.
So that's a wonderful message. And I was hoping you would touch a specific part of what I wanted to pull out of you. And you did. Just having that safe space, because especially in this, multiracial, multicultural marriage, you're having two different people with these different perspectives and life
Yep.
experiences. So to have that safe space, and John fits right in, we know that, right? Into our family. He
Oh
fits
yeah.
right in, doesn't miss a beat. But having that safe space and being able to have your voice. And one of the
Yep.
things about monitoring, maintaining, and managing your mental health so that it is good mental health is being able to talk. Talk
Yep.
can save a life. Being able to express what you're feeling, what you're processing, what you're going through. So if your husband is of a different race, ethnicity, whatever, culture, that he creates that safe space as John does for Taylor. That is amazing. Kudos to John,
Can
seriously,
I
my
can I
son in
just say
love. Hmm.
can I say one more thing too that I thought
Absolutely.
of earlier before you go into your next question? You asked about the effect of my life experience, your attempt, father not being there, abuse, things like that. You asked
Hmm.
about that. What effect did it have? I think it also bred a lot of anger. So having these I've been trying to like wreck my brain. It came up when you were talking about something else, and I've been wrecking my brain to figure out where did all my anger come from. Because I'm telling you, when in the past when I've gotten really mad, I think it's that saying. I'm just a walking, happiness-go-lucky.com book, but truly like quotes book. But there's this saying that talks about raise your argument, not your voice. And I
Mm.
have been notorious for raising my voice and cutting people down when I'm upset. And it comes, I don't think from me wanting to hit below the belt in arguments, but it's just, I think on many levels, losing control can often breed anger and resentment, and you don't know how to process it and talk through it. I should have totally, we talk about this all the time. Why in the world didn't anybody offer me therapy? Like,
Yeah.
you tried to take your life, and
Hmm.
I was still like, I don't remember life. John asked me this like a while ago when we were unpacking some things, and he said, like, did you go to therapy? And I was like, no. And I never even thought, it never came to mind. But nobody asked, like, and that's where we see and we weren't an underprivileged group, but I think about us, like, we lived in a white neighborhood. You worked a great job. We had financial stability, and yet it was never even thought. Like, you just picked back up and went back to work, and I went back to school, and the school didn't say, hey, you need to be talking to the counselor. Like, I don't remember
Well,
ever going to a counselor.
and that's the thing. The school didn't. I was a single mother, having attempted suicide for the fourth time. Was in the hospital for an extended stay, like I'm at a hotel. Um, but when I was released, I was actually, and that's another part of my story that I don't even share. When I was released and went back to work, I thought, full disclosure, I told my supervisor, and I lost my job right after that. So now I'm
Oh
going
my
through the
gosh.
process. Yeah.
I
I
did
don't
not
talk
know
about that
that.
often. I've shared that with a few people, but not many. But I lost my job, and of course, in hindsight, I know that was a lawsuit, right? But who's
Yep.
thinking about a lawsuit when you're trying to just want to live? Because I wasn't released from the
Yep.
mental ward of the hospital, and oh, now everything's gone. I'm fine. I want to live. I was released, still
You
depressed,
have the same.
angry that I
Yep.
was alive,
Yep.
and now I have to face a daughter who knows that in her mind, in her 9-year-old mind, the processing of, you tried to leave me. So, and now I'm
Mm.
unemployed. So, and I did get a small severance. I
That's
found another
awful. I
job.
didn't know
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. I got a severance. They gave me they called it a layoff, but I was the only person getting laid off.
Mm.
Usually in companies, they lay off several
Huh.
people or at least a person per department. I was the only person, but really it was a firing. It wasn't, they said layoff because they knew it was illegal to call it a firing. But yeah, I got a layoff with a small severance, and it did tide us over. But now I'm looking for a job, and I'm still suffering from depression, and I'm still trying to figure it out. And so when you say, no one said, you're absolutely right. I dropped the ball, but I didn't even see the ball. I wasn't even aware enough to
But not
understand there
even,
was a
but that's
ball.
the thing.
I know you're talking about community and the teachers and the principal, the school, because they knew,
Yep.
when
Because that
I
wouldn't
won't
have
say
been
her name.
but that wouldn't have been, that wouldn't have even been your job to do that.
Hmm.
Obviously, if somebody's sick, if it was anything else, and that's the thing that
If it was
irritates me.
cancer,
Sorry. Yeah, that's
yeah.
what I was just about to say. If it was
Hmm.
cancer, they would be like, oh, sweetie baby, we'll pick you up from school and drop you off
Yeah.
at grandma's house. And
Yeah.
like, but when it's mental health, like a big mental health crisis,
Mhm.
nothing happened from that.
No social workers came to our place. Nobody, nothing. And I was in the mental ward of the hospital after a fourth suicide attempt, and they knew it was the fourth suicide attempt. So I don't know. We won't talk about that because well, we talked about it, but
That's
that was
important.
I was 30. I'm almost 49 now, so that was almost 20 years ago. I'm sure the systems are different now, but I hope they are. I really hope they are. But some of that too is, and I hate to say it, it's race related. I'm sorry, it is. That's a black woman with a black child. Shoulder shrugs in the white neighborhood. Shoulder shrugs, because I don't think that would have happened. But here's the other point, and this is why I said we could talk for days about this, because you're
I know
married,
this is
right?
good.
You have a
Yeah.
husband. I was single. So that's the importance of having that husband and wife, because where I lack and I fall down, like if that happened and I was married, my husband would pick up the slack. He would have
Exactly.
enough knowledge to understand, wait a minute, we got to deal with this child. Or if your father, even without a husband, if your father was in your life and saying, wait a
Yeah.
minute, my baby needs some therapy, she needs to talk to someone. And
Mm-hmm.
and then it did cause that fear with you, because I remember you, if I walked out of a room and went into the bathroom and I was in the bathroom too long, mommy, you're okay, you're okay. And I'm like, and I had to sit you down several, no, seriously, several times, Taylor, over the span of your life, especially for that first 2 to 3 years. I'm okay, Taylor. I promise I will never do that again. I promise I'm not leaving you.
Mm-hmm.
You will be grown and old when I go. And I literally had to have that conversation over and over and over again from a place of lack in me, because I made the promise. And I
Mm-hmm.
literally feel like at times I stayed alive because I made that promise to you, because I still was
You were
depressed.
keeping the promise. I was just
I
gonna
still
say
wanted to
that. Yep,
die.
you were speaking it into literal, and you were speaking it into literal life, right? As
Yeah.
like while you were saying it. That's interesting. Hmm.
Yeah. So
Man,
we've
this is
taken a
so
lot of
deep.
detours. This
Should
is
I
so
crack a
much.
joke now or?
Yes, please do. You know me. Come on. Come on. Give it to me.
Oh my god.
We don't have
Oh.
time, Taylor. Come on, spit it out.
I don't have anything.
Oh, I thought you
I
had a
don't
joke.
have a specific
I
joke, but
thought
I
you
should have
had a joke
prepared
you
one.
were holding back. No, I thought you had a joke that you were holding back. Okay, so we might have to do a part two of this, seriously, because it's 8:50. But what parallel? Oh, we did the parallel. So, how important is wellness and mental health when parenting and being a wife? How important is your wellness and mental health?
Yep. So sorry, you guys. How important the mental health? Get your
Sorry, we're
rest.
keeping you up.
Yeah, no, no. Mental health and wellness is definitely important when you're a parent and a wife because you're signing up for your partner, you're signing up for your kids. Nobody asked to be part of this, with the exception of your partner, because they did marry you, right? So like my husband obviously signed up for me, but even still, he didn't sign up for all my. He did sign up for my baggage, but it's our responsibility to unpack the bags
Mhm.
and move in at some point. Boom, that was good. Truly.
Boom!
Boom.
Wait,
Where's your horn?
got it?
Because
Mic drop.
but truly, so many of us are just moving in with our spouse, and we're expecting that they're going to be fine with garbage bags in the corner that are all like they're not going to be fine with that, and you shouldn't be fine with that. So I say all of that, but it's a lot harder to really unpack those garbage bags and take out the trash, right? Unless you really face it head on, like you said earlier. So John and I, we're actually in therapy. We go to a therapist together for our marriage, and we've had the opportunity to unpack things before each other. This is like a 2 for 1 with our therapist, but and he's a Christian. Like I said earlier, you have to have a therapist that is aligned with your values. He's a Christian, he's a pastor, and we get to sit down with him every week, bi-weekly. We kind of just go as needed, and we talk to him about our past, our present, and then what we want for the future. So um, it definitely plays a role in marriage and parenting, and I found that he's been able to unpack things. I think it's twofold. Having therapy, seeking help from somebody you trust. Maybe you don't have the financial stability. Not everybody has the finances to go to therapy. If you don't, then find somebody you trust who's grounded in your same values and talk with them and be truly transparent, because you
Mhm.
can't get to a place where you really resolve things without being transparent. And I will say, especially when you're married, being vulnerable in front of your spouse, like sometimes after therapy, I'm like, I just love you, because I've gotten to see him unpack things right in front of me. And I'm like, this is so great. Like it, 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 it's just that thing that you need to stay close. And I think it comes from being able to see somebody else open up their heart. So that was one big thing that I thought of this morning when I was thinking about this interview. The thing that has helped me the most in this season, just to wrap it up, because I know we're running out of time, the thing that's helped me the most in this season of my life is being transparent. So if you follow me on Instagram, if we're connected there, or if you watch my YouTube, which I got to do better with my videos there, but I've been so focused on being transparent real time, not waiting until after I've unpacked and thrown out the trash to say, hey guys, see how easy it was for me to throw out the trash? It's gone. No, like I want to have progress reports. Like you get why do you think we have report cards when we're kids? Because teachers want to be able to see our progress over time. And I think that's what we lack. Once we grow up and we become adults, we no longer have a progress report. Some companies don't even do performance reviews, but no one's taking a progress report of their mental health, their physical health, their spiritual health. Like, and gosh, this is so good. I should write a book about this. Like,
Oh
I
my.
should call it, but truly, I should call this your five keys.
Let's not expose it online. Let's write it down so that no one grabs the thought and runs off with it.
I know you're right.
As you guys can see, she does not lack in confidence. Okay.
I struggle too, but guess what? I struggle with you. And that is the number one difference in my mental health check. I'm mental health checking in with everybody at the same time. If you've been on my Instagram lately, I've been posting some depressed stuff. I've been like, I'm frustrated. People get on my nerves because I want to be honest about where I am today. And in the past, I've just been behind closed doors, being abused, behind closed doors, screaming at people, not just other people, but me too, cursing them out, behind closed doors, being disrespectful, behind closed doors, hating my body. And now I'm like, hey, guess what? I had a baby and I'm chunky and I love eating chocolate. Do you like eating chocolate too? Great. Let's eat chocolate while we work out together. That's kind of where I am in my latest journey. And it's really been freeing for my mental health. So what role does mental health play? It plays all the roles. If you can't, everybody says it, it's so cliche, but if you can't show up for yourself, you're not going to be able to show up for your family. And I do feel like prioritizing help and for my marriage, for myself, for my kids is so important and pivotal. So
that's really good. That's a really, really good point, because as you addressed stigma earlier and talking about, the stigma surrounding mental health, the stigma surrounding depression and mental illnesses and suicide and all that, stigma is it's supported and it grows through silence. Stigma is supported through silence. So the more we talk about what's going on, the more we rid the world of stigma. Every single time you talk about something that most people are like, oh my gosh, did she just say that? Oh my gosh, but they feel it and they don't walk in the courage to say it. But when you say it, it gives them the permission to now say, wait, me too. Like, yes, girl, I struggle too. You want to struggle together so we can struggle less because we'll support each other. And that's freeing. So that is, of course, when you are transparent, when you are bringing exposure to those things that are not even real issues. They're just being human. It's a fallacy that it's an issue to want sweets or to have an imperfect body. Most people have imperfect bodies. God didn't create any of us to perfection. So for a reason, so that we would have to rely on him, so that we would have to rely on others, so that we would need each other. The greatest commandments are love God, and love people. So that's why we're imperfect, because we need God and we need people, we need community. So it's great that you said the transparency, because transparency helps in having a positive and balanced mental health. That's really, really wonderful. So Taylor, I know we've talked a lot about you, the 9-year-old Taylor. What would you say today, being the 28-year-old Taylor? What would you say to that frightened 9-year-old Taylor who is, has one mother, one father who's not barely there, and the mother's trying to die, what would you say to her?
So actually, I'm going to read this verbatim because I did prepare this specifically and I don't want to get it wrong. I
Okay.
would say you're going to be fine, but don't dedicate. I would say you're going to be fine, but don't dedicate your life to finding love because of your trauma.
Mm,
Love will find you. Protect your
mm.
heart and pause and pray before you prioritize others' mental health before your own.
You need to post that somewhere for a little 9-year-old who's experiencing trauma, or a little 10-year-old, or 13-year-old, or 16-year-old. That needs to be seen. And even for some 35, 40-year-olds, that's really good. That's
Yeah.
really good. Thank you for that. And what advice would you give moms who are experiencing any form of mental illness, anxiety, depression, whatever it is?
Oh, yeah. So one tip, I'll just give one tip. Whenever I find myself super anxious and I have this week, I think that's why you guys, you see my eye, it's a little red. I think this is
Mm-hmm.
stress induced. I've been having like red eye on and off randomly out of nowhere. And I think it's because I've been stressed out from work. But I think the advice that I would give is just stand up, like literally stand up and walk away. I'm not
Mm.
saying walk away from your kids, walk away from your marriage, or walk away
Ew.
from your job, or walk away from your job, but truly just in the moment when you're feeling anxious, just stand up and walk away. If it's work making you anxious, you're on a call, put your AirPods in, stand up and walk away, or say, "Excuse me, I'm sorry, I have an emergency." Because your mental health is an emergency, and we
Yes,
keep
it
like
is.
playing games with it, but it's an emergency. I have canceled calls this week because my mental health is an emergency. I'm so sorry, I had something come up and it's urgent. It's called
Mm-hmm.
me. Like they don't need to know that, but they can know that like I have to prioritize me, or I'll find myself either quitting or getting fired. So it's so important to just stand up and walk away. It sounds so simple. When Grant's teething right now, he has a molar coming in. He's falling out on the floor. You know what I do? If I'm already standing, I just walk away. I'm like, I'm gonna pray
Poor
for you,
baby.
brother. It's not
My poor
forever. It's not
grandbaby.
forever. It's not forever, you guys, but it's a temporary fix.
Mm-hmm.
It's a temporary fix so that I don't end up with a larger problem. Stand up and walk away. Already standing, just walk away. Set a timer on your watch. I use my Apple Watch. I take 5 to 10 minutes. I'll set a timer, 5 to 10 minutes. I'll come back and I'll deal with it. The other thing too is limit your screen time, because I have found, and I think that's why my eyes are bothering me too, the stress and the strain on our eyes. We are looking at screens more than ever. And, there's so much research that shows that there are,
Mm-hmm.
endorphins. Like people are becoming addicted to screens, and I've even become addicted to screens. So, biggest recommendation is number two. I said I was only going to give you one, but I had to give you number two. Get away from the screens, pause, and find ways to be present. And I know it's so cliche. I posted this actually the other day, but yeah, just get away from the screens. They really make us sick. That's why the TV, when I fall asleep with it on, my stomach hurts, because these things are not good for us. And then the third thing I would say is, and these are all very practical, I would say, um, man, I forgot the third thing. Oh, make a nice meal for yourself. We don't do that enough. I think that we wait until our spouse is home to make a gourmet meal. It's like that saying, it's 5 o'clock somewhere. I'm not saying drink wine every time, but fine and dine. Find wine and dine yourself, right? With or without the wine. Take the time to truly sit down and just have like a meal with yourself. And then of course, like again, I go back to routine. In the mornings, on my good mornings, these are my good days, you guys. I'm not perfect. 2 to 3 days a week, I'm up at 4:30, between 4:30 and 5:30, somewhere in that range. I get up, I sit on my couch in my office here, and I start reading my Bible. Not because I'm just holier than thou, because I love me to cut. I love me some time to cuss, but because I know I need Jesus so that I don't cuss as much, right?
Oh,
So
help her, Lord, help her.
sorry to all your friends that I'm probably embarrassing you for,
Not at all,
but
girl,
truly.
please. Not at all.
But truly for me, I have to crack open my Bible. And again, it's 7 days in a week. And I just told you guys 2 to 3 days a week I get to it. Some mornings I'm just so tired because I'm up so late on these screens. and I go to
Mm-hmm.
bed and I wake up at 7:30 and now I'm rushed. But my morning routine has been the number one thing that has driven my success in all areas. John even told me the other day, he's like, "You're so you." I said, Do you think the 4:30 mornings really helps? Like it helps me. Do you think I seem happier?" And he's like, "You definitely seem really happy at 4:30 in the morning." And I know that was his way of telling me like, "You're really happy when you wake up, but as the day goes on and people drive you nuts, like I know it's bothering you." But it was true. I mean, I think 4:30 in the morning always makes me feel in control of my day, which again, you're talking to somebody who struggled with control issues, but you have to meet yourself where you are as well. So if you know
Mm-hmm.
you struggle with control issues, have control over the things you can control. Control what you're putting in your body, control how much water you're drinking, control what time you wake up. And then you won't have any energy to control the people around you because you're so exhausted from trying to control everything else in your life.
Oh, it's tiring
So that's
enough to
what's helped
control
me,
myself,
honestly.
right? No, that's really good.
Exactly.
So one of the things that Taylor shared, that was hilarious. But I really wanted to hone in on the fact that you talked about, you said, I hope I'm not embarrassing you with your friends. First of all, I'm very proud of my daughter. She is amazing and incredible straight across the board. She is imperfect, as am I, as are you. So, and that kind of ties into everything else you just said, just being honest, because mental health, if we are dishonest, if we are suppressing, if we are compartmentalizing and disassociating what we feel and what happened to us and our traumas or just our everyday life, our everyday frustrations, what ends up happening is we never learn who our real self is. We never walk
Oh,
fully in who we are. So the fact that Taylor can say, hey, 2 or 3 times a week I'm doing this and I'm excelling, but it's 7 days a week. Like that's not even half. So but that's truthful and that honest, and that gives her room to grow. You can't grow from something you hide. You can't grow from something you refuse to expose, right? How are you going to grow if you're
yep.
showing up perfect every day? There is no growth needed. So I'm thankful
Hmm.
that you're honest about that, and just that's good mental health. That's practicing good mental health, because good mental health is that self-care, being honest about where you are, and it gives you room to grow and room to do better tomorrow
Yep.
if you feel like it, or next week. Right? So
Exactly.
can you share some other things? I don't know, you've shared quite a bit, but if you'd like to share anything else, you are no, I'm not saying that like an insult. You've given a lot of wonderful
I
nuggets, those
know. I'm just
jewels.
laughing. It's a
I
lot.
know. But if you'd like to share anything else, I know that you are vegan. You are a mom that's a vegan, feeding your children the vegan way, and your husband is a vegan. That's a whole lot.
Yeah.
And you're a new mom on so many levels. That's a story for you and John to tell. But you have a little baby, and then you have this almost 9 year old. How are you managing that? If you'd like to give people some tips, and then I'm going to give you the last few minutes of the show to give any tips you'd like on how to exercise your mental health and manage a home with children and the vegan lifestyle, and anything else you'd like to share. And then give everyone your contact information, how they can follow you, support you, any projects you have upcoming, and how we can really support you.
No, that's great. Thank you. I love this part because I get to connect with all of you. Yeah, thank you everyone for listening. Truly, I definitely, again, everything I shared before, having a good enough routine, and I know all the self help people talk about routine, but if they're all talking about it, it must be there must be some truth to it, right? And I do feel like I'm not going to say morning routine, but I will say control what you can control, whatever that looks like, and find new things. Sometimes I've found myself picking up new projects, and John's always like, every week you're doing something different. And it's like, well, if I'm not, I'm going to be watching you like a hawk to make sure I have like a perfect grasp on everything. So for me, you have to know where you are, right? And I think that's been part of my journey is like talking about where I am, but also being about where I am. Being about where I am for me looks like I have control challenge things that I struggle with. I struggle with some anxieties. And so redirection, like sometimes you have to redirect, just like a little kid, right? A little kid, they're playing with something they shouldn't be messing with. What do? You don't let them play with the fire. You redirect them and give them a task. You,
Mm-hmm.
oh, Granty, you love helping me cook. Great. Help me cook over here. Put the pots and pans away, sometimes we have to redirect the inner child in us. And so that's what I've been really focused on. Like, okay, my inner child, she's sad, she has anger, she has these things. Okay, how can you redirect that? And then again, taking care of like spoiling yourself. I've started, you can see my nails, they're not like always done, but John's always like, I'm going to pay for you to go get your nails done regularly. So again, prioritizing self-care. I like getting my nails done. That's what I'm doing right now. Next week, it might be, I like, I don't know. I like t-shirts, so I go and get t-shirts or something. It really shouldn't be something outside of yourself necessarily because that
Mm-hmm.
is temporary.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're finding something that brings you joy and it's project focused, redirect that energy and prioritize self-care. Make yourself a nice meal. Have a glass of wine in moderation. Not trying to make people alcoholics out here, but
Thank you.
again, in moderation. And then again, finding the balance, right? So balance, I don't believe really exists, but I do think that we can set up. I'm big on like in the workplace and in real life, we have spreadsheets for everything. Our financial stability is all mapped out on a spreadsheet for John and I in our household. It's the same thing at work. And if you're feeling like if you struggle and you're similar to me where you struggle with wanting to be in control, again, create projects where you can organize and streamline your life. I don't go grocery shopping in the store, and that's helped me. Even before COVID, I really didn't grocery shop that much in the store. Somebody told me once, sometimes you're choosing between money and sometimes you're choosing between time. Sometimes you might have to spend a little more money to save time and spend a little more time to save money. So
Mm-hmm.
that has followed. That quote is big to me because anytime I have to make a big life decision with John or by myself, I always think, do I want to save time right now or do I want to save money? So I've been really focused on, I would rather spend a little bit of money in this season of our life on things that I can outsource. So we have somebody who comes and cleans now once a month. This is only the second month, y'all. I'm not that bougie. But, we have somebody that comes to clean. We have, I pick up groceries through ClickList. Kroger, if you have a Kroger in your local area, and honestly, most grocery stores, they're now doing free pickup. You just go online and order. You're spending a little bit of time on the front end, but it's less time than what you'd spend in the store. And most of the time, I get about 80% of the orders right for us. And 80% is good for me if it means I'm going to get more time back with my family. And then meal prepping, we haven't been good at, but we're going to try to meal prep more. A lot of it is, again, streamlining efficiencies at home. We talk about it in business, but how do you streamline your efficiencies at home? I think I heard another quote. Geez, I'm a walking quote. But another quote I heard was like, run your home like you run your business. Do you
Mm-hmm.
show up at work late every day? Like, okay, are you showing up late to your partner? Which soon I'm going to have to go because this is John and I's TV time, even though it's really late. So don't judge us. But truly, like, how do you show up in your home? Run your home like you run your business. Have spreadsheets on your finances. And I keep bringing up finances not because money is so important, because it's for the birds, but truly, if you have spreadsheets on things like your finances, I mean, everybody, like John and I have really never argued over money. And I think it's because we've just documented it. We control what we can, and it's for the most part combined. So it's out of our mind. It's just kind of streamlined. And even in
Mm-hmm.
seasons, and I'm not just saying that because we have decent career paths, it's not even about that. Because there was a moment where I was unemployed for 2 months. Like I just
Mm-hmm.
quit my job because I hated the culture. And he was like, I'm with you, girl. And I was pregnant, you guys. But we had a
Mm-hmm.
peace about it because we prayed about it and we had streamlined efficiencies. Like if I were to die tomorrow, and I've been working on another project so that I don't drive my
Mm-hmm.
family crazy. I've been working a lot wild, so I don't drive my family wild. But one project that I recently picked up was documenting who is our medical provider. Because wives usually do this stuff. Like we schedule the doctor's appointments, the dental appointments. So I created a spreadsheet like who goes to which dentist, who goes to which doctor, what are their hours, what's their address, what's the phone number, what's our insurance. So like organizing your life so that when the worst happens, like COVID, right? Who was prepared for COVID? And I think it showed us the instability of our governmental framework. But just because the government is off doesn't mean your life has to be. So run your home like you run your business. And that goes for meal prep. Think about what you want to make. And that's the other thing about buying your groceries not in the store. It actually has helped us organize. We eat a lot of the same stuff over and over again. I'm not going to lie, being vegan
Mm-hmm.
and with two working parents in the home, it's difficult for us to actually like be creative all the time. But when you know something works, you know the kids like it, just keep making it. Vegetable, protein, and what am I missing? Starch, healthy starch. Just keep making the same thing. You know, every night, Tuesdays, it's Taco Tuesday, streamline your efficiency. So, and that has helped with my mental health because, again, I want things to be perfect. So, how can you guarantee they're perfect? It's documented. So, you just do it the same way every time.
And one thing, Taylor, I'm sorry, I have to interrupt. One thing,
No,
Taylor
you're
is
fine.
very organized. And so she's sharing from her perspective and her zone of genius.
Yes.
Because Taylor, at 4 years old, had a dry erase marker writing her schedule for the day. 4, writing this. Mommy, how do you spell this? Girl, what are you? And literally would write the schedule, the time at 4 in the morning. And not 4 in the morning. She was 4 years old in every morning. And I'm just like,
Like 4 in the morning.
I've never seen such. And she has not deviated from that. She is still that person. So if you're not as organized as she is, eat the meat, spit out the bones, the parts where it's like, oh, that's too much organization for me. But there are some ways that you can still, if you're writing on a dry erase board, and it's just that simple. You may not have the big fancy spreadsheet, but you guys can come to a meeting of the minds once a week and talk about your finances and what you're going to spend money on and what you're not. So anyway, I just had to jump in there because that's always been just a beautiful attribute of yours. You've always been organized.
And that's the other thing though too, like it's part of seeking help, right? Seeking help isn't just like trying to figure out how to do it on your own. Seeking help, these spreadsheets exist. You can go to Google and type in monthly finance or monthly budget calculator and find a spreadsheet that's better than mine. So find the area of your life that has a fracture, so to speak, and find a resource. I think I wrote that down too as something I wanted to share. Write down like your problem statements, like in business, I know, but write down the problem statements. I feel like I don't have enough money for groceries. Okay. Google people who have gone through not having enough money for groceries. Like it sounds super simple. Like for me, I'm Googling every week. I feel like I need to lose 20 more pounds. And guess what? I'm researching it and I found something that works for me. Am I consistent with it? No. And that's why I keep going back to Google to learn more. Okay, great. This program can work for me if I'm more consistent, but there's always a better program out there. There's always some like just leveling up. Like Sierra said it best, level up, right? And how do we level up? By turning to Google.
I hate that
Go to
song.
Google.
Sorry. So before you go, for some reason, some people cannot comment inside of StreamYard.
No.
So Bianca Fly is out there watching. Thank you so much, Bianca Fly. I think Ash Janelle was out there. Nicole Williams was out there. Thank you all so much for watching. Please share this video because I know it's going to help some people. But Bianca also talked about, as you were talking about not self-care, but what mommies can do, especially new moms, and to help their mental health. She said self-care as a new mommy is the best thing that you can do for yourself. So, and you also talked about that, of course, self-care. So I'm not going to interrupt anymore. You will close us out. Share with the people how they can find you, any projects you're working on, how they can support you, and anything you have coming up.
Yes, thank you. I'll keep this short, you guys. So thanks again for watching. I am over on Instagram for most of my time in my day, at Taylor M. Taylor M as in Mickey Mouse _ Rysdon. That's RYSD as in dog ON. So I know I sound like I'm on the phone with a service representative trying to spell out my last name. So yeah, I'm over on Instagram at Taylor M _ Rysdon. And then a few projects that you guys can tune in for next week this time. Well, not this time, but next week in 2 days from now. I will actually have my mom right here out of my shell on my live show. I don't know why. Who do I think I am? Show.
You have a show. I have a show.
My live series. It's my live series. It's called Fueled by Faith, and it's all about. I have this quote that I can't even believe I came up with because I was not in a space of like mental wellness, so to speak, but it's called our decisions are either fueled by fear or fueled by faith. And I do believe that everything in life we're either making fear-based decisions or faith-based decisions. So That series is all about connecting with women, mothers, and all women who are killing it in their industry, killing it in life, and are making decisions and stepping out on faith, living and letting their faith fuel them. So that's one way you can connect. I have like 7 or 8 people lined up coming up, but I'm excited about my mom joining me next Saturday. And then I also have a newsletter. So if you want to stay connected, I have a bi-weekly newsletter, and you can visit my blog, www.thetaylorisms.org, not .com, .org, so that you can check out my blog, and you can also subscribe to the newsletter there, and you'll also get that. And then I have a vegan, a lot of people don't know this, but I have a vegan shopping list. So if anyone's curious about the vegan lifestyle, what to buy, what recipes to try, that vegan grocery list is on my blog as well. It's through the newsletter. You have to subscribe and click I'm interested in the freebie, and it's completely free. It's just a free resource to help you guys. So hopefully you'll connect with me. I'd love to connect with you all, and thanks for everyone. Thanks everyone for tuning in. I obviously need some rest.
We both do. Thank you, Taylor. This was amazing. There were so many jewels dropped just all over the place. So many amazing nuggets. I appreciate your transparency, your openness, your humor, your time, because Taylor is on EST or ET. We're on CT. So I appreciate you. Thank you, John, for loaning us my girl for a little while, and your girl. We appreciate you. Guys, go on over to Instagram. It's Taylor M. Rysdon on Instagram. Taylor
M_Rysdon.
Taylor M_Rysdon. Let me write that out. Taylor M_Rysdon. Oh, if I could spell. I'm tired.
Thank you.
On
okay.
Instagram. And then she's on Facebook, of course, as Taylor Rysdon. Also, you can follow her, go support her. She has so many amazing nuggets, and she's so real. Y'all will love her, not just because she's my daughter, but because seriously, y'all will love her. So I appreciate you. I appreciate each and every one of you. I thank you. She's out of here. She might have lost her connection. I'm not sure, but each and every one of you have an amazing night. Oh, you're back. Okay. I was like, oh, she left. Maybe her connection dropped.
Happened.
It's okay. It's time to go. So thank you all so much. Taylor, be blessed. We normally close it out with prayer. You be blessed. You know, I'm your mother, so I got you covered. I got you covered spiritually, but you be blessed. All of the viewers, please share the video out. I'm sure it will help so many people, and it'll stretch across generations, right?
Yeah.
This is a really good conversation. So thank you all. Create the life you desire. Once it's created and secured, you reach back, you reach down, and teach someone else how to create the life they desire. Until the next time,
Thank
be
you.
blessed.
Thanks
Bye.
for
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Bye.